Welcome to the Ride This Out podcast, where we talk about how to improve your mental health and strengthen your connection to nature and your community, all through one simple solution: the bicycle. My name is Zach Golding, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and mental health therapist. I'll be your host as we discuss the power of pedaling. All right, welcome into this week's session. I talk with Niki Campbell of Southern California. Niki talks about her journey into cycling, how she just started out 3 years ago, but how she uses it to refresh and energize her mind. I came across Niki on Instagram. She posted a really cool reel that caught my attention, talking about having ADHD and as a kid, and then what to do with all that energy, and how cycling has really helped her channel that. And we talk about that a little bit within this session. So I also loved how she discusses being open and being open-minded to new things and to new ways of approaching things and new rides, and the community and the support that she has felt. So great stuff. Thanks again, Niki, for sharing your story with us. Thanks again for listening, guys. I appreciate it if you share this with other people that you might be thinking about getting into riding, or hopefully this inspires you to form your own group ride or get in and try something new. So enjoy this week's session with Niki. All right, Niki, thanks again for coming on the podcast today. If you want to just go ahead and start off by introducing yourself, who you are, where you're from, just all those good things. So go ahead.
Heck yeah, thanks for having me, Zach. I am Niki Campbell, Niki Camps on Instagram. And I have picked up cycling in the last 3 years or so. Pretty new at it, but if you go on my social profile, it looks like I've been doing it forever. It took over my whole life, I think. So, yeah, I pretty much love being outdoors. Every day I try to get outside, and riding my bike is one of the avenues that I do that within.
So yeah,
Uh,
3 years. I didn't realize it was just 3 years. How did you get into it? Did someone introduce you, or you just wanted to start it one day?
yeah, so well, in May of 2021, I decided to sign up for a triathlon in Malibu, um, in California, and uh, I decided to go shop around for bikes because I went out on a little hybrid bike that I had bought a while ago from Amazon, and I realized it was really heavy, and I was like, this is painful and I hate it, and it's windy out here, and why did I do this? So then I went and went on Craigslist. Well, actually, I had a friend go find me a bike. She went on Craigslist and found me a really cool 2004 road bike from Giant. And so I went and bought it. I had no idea how to use drop bars on a bike, and I got on it. I'm like, I don't even know how to stop this thing. So that's kind of how I started road biking. And here in in Southern California and Ventura, the bike paths that we have in this area are amazing. So I kind of just started doing coastal rides each day, and I kind of fell in love with the sunsets and all of that. So that's kind of how I got into it.
But yeah, so triathlon. But was there something about the biking aspect of the triathlon that really got to you? Because I've talked to other people that have done triathlons, and that's what they say. They're like, I don't like swimming, I
Yeah.
don't like running, but I love biking.
Yeah, so I grew up swimming in high school. That was my sport. So when I thought of a triathlon, I'm a filmmaker and photographer by trade, and I picked up uh, swimming when I was in high school, and I think I was right out of high school, and I was filming this triathlon for the church that I was working at. And I was kind of watching them as I was filming, and I was like, oh, I already swim, and I kind of know how to run. So the only thing I have to figure out how to do is how to bike ride. I was like, I think I can do this. And so quite a few years later, I decided to sign up for one. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do this year. I've, I have nothing really better to do, and I have a lot of energy, so I should just go ahead and try it. Um, and yeah, the biking. So I did the triathlon, and the biking kind of was the thing I was trying to work on the most because I needed the most progression in that area. And so, as I was training in the summer, I like was doing a lot of coastal bike rides in Ventura. And then uh, about August, my friend posted this glorious photo of her going downhill on this like beautifully paved road covered like in a canopy of trees. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. How can I need to go on this ride with you. And so she's like, oh, come to this ride. It's in Santa Barbara. It's hosted by this bike shop called Boom Boom Bike Room. And it's like a gravel ride. And I was like, oh shoot. I'm like, that's different. I have a road bike. And so I was like, okay. And my friend, he's selling his gravel bike. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll borrow it. He's the same size as me. So I borrowed his gravel bike, went on this ride, and like we went down this crazy single track um, on this ride. And it was like I started going every week with this borrowed bike that I ended up buying off of this guy. And so that was kind of my intro into not only road cycling, but gravel cycling. And the guys that went on this ride were super kind. Like I would be on the single track kind of going around the switchbacks, um, and there would be some guys behind me and they're like, oh, take as much time as you need. Like I would get off the bike. I'm like, I don't know if I can. She's like, you got this. Like all that stuff. And it was just such an encouraging, warm environment. And that the community that was there at that group ride, I was like, this is amazing. And so then I went and did the triathlon, and the triathlon was super fun, but I stopped swimming after that. I stopped running and I went straight into just like hardcore biking all the time. Um, and found a lot of, joy and success in it. So stuck with it.
Yeah, and your Instagram, that's how I came across who you are and what you do and everything. Your Instagram is
Totally.
amazing. I mean, it's definitely, you can tell that you're a filmer and photographer and all those great things. So yeah, how have you kind of melded those two things together as far as like the creative process of
Yeah.
the videos and the photography with cycling?
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's definitely a creative outlet, being able to use video and photo to communicate. That's always been something that's been up my alley. Um, and on the bike, it's kind of easy to grab your phone as long as you're, relatively careful to not fall. It's like I've been able to capture these amazing sceneries, and with biking, you can get up to high mountains with very very little time at all. And I just found that like people need to kind of see this. And I was so stoked on what I was seeing and doing and experiencing with friends. And um I just wanted to communicate that to the world, and there was no better way than to capture that. I spent a lot of years before I found the triathlon and cycling, surfing a lot, and you can't take your phone or a camera very easily out into the ocean. Um, and I didn't want to be that person with like a GoPro on the front of my board. And so I didn't do much of that, and I couldn't really capture that as much. But cycling, it came very naturally, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I found that even like I kind of started talking to a couple of small brands, and they were like, oh, we really like, your photo work. Like, can you take a few photos and we'll send you some free products? And I was like, shoot, yeah, of course. So that's kind of how I got into that. And people just seemed to be like, I'd be like, oh, I did like a 35-mile bike ride. And people would be like, what? They'd like freak out. And so I'm like, oh, people are like impressed and inspired by this. So I was kind of stoked to keep going.
That's super cool. Yeah, and that's the reel that really caught my attention was the one where you talked about growing up with ADHD, and
Hmm.
then just how you have this energy, and cycling has helped kind of I don't know, harness that, or use that energy in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to speak on that, and like how it's helped, because
totally.
I've seen that help a lot of people, especially with symptoms of ADHD, and how that
Yeah,
energy and cycling can really help them.
absolutely. Yeah, I think the best, it was interesting when I first picked it up because I was surfing a lot, but surfing it, you can't really go out in the water when it's like, you know, I mean, you can go out in the water, but you can't enjoy a great surf session if there's no waves. And, if it's super windy, it's really not enjoyable. And so cycling kind of took that element out of it. Like you can pretty much go out in most conditions. And so I could, bank on getting out and going on a bike ride every single day, um, if I wanted to. And for me, starting my morning before work. Like when I picked this up, I was working at an 8 to 5 job, and I would go do an hour bike ride before work, and I just found that I was so refreshed and energized from taking that time to move my body in the morning, and expose my eyes to the light outside, um, just for an hour each day. And it kind of channeled my energy for the rest of the day, where I was, I got that energy out first thing in the morning, and I didn't have to think like, oh, what am I going to do later today to get exercise or whatever. So channeling that energy definitely helped, just my focus throughout the day. And I find that, having some, even if I, now I kind of work from home part time. Um, and I find that if I have something to look forward to, I'll go on a walk in the morning, and then I'll plan a bike ride for like midday. And it's just like, that's what I'm waiting for each day. Like I'm really looking forward to that, just being outside, and I can ride for, 2 to 3 hours, and my brain is entertaining itself. And, I don't really need music to listen to, because like I'm thinking about a million things all the time anyways. So it's kind of nice to just be hyper aware of like your surroundings when you're riding. And I just find it, like, my brain, it's very conducive to what cycling is. Um, and I think most people would get bored, but I don't find that I really get bored hours on the bike.
Yeah, no, I love that. He said, just it refreshes and energizes you, and yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when you're cycling and when you're moving, it kind of almost speeds up your brain, so then it can kind of slow down, right? Because you're so hyper
Absolutely.
aware of your surroundings, and so all that
Yeah.
energy that you have, all of a sudden, it just helps you kind of focus and be in the moment. So it's
Hone
beautiful.
in. Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, you do a lot of road cycling, gravel cycling. Have I seen you do some mountain biking too? Like, what kind of riding do you do? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, so I've only ever raced on a gravel bike. Um, that to me is the most fun element. You're kind of throwing in a challenge. Road cycling for me is like a good training mechanism. I like to be able to, just get up, go on a quick bike ride, and put my bike in the car, and like, you know, if I don't shower, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm not that stinky afterwards. Um, so yeah, but I picked up mountain biking. Like I mean, I spent the last year, all of 2023, I spent gravel cycling. And so then I borrowed a friend's mountain bike, and I've never used a lightweight, cross country full suspension mountain bike. And I borrowed her bike, and I was like, this is epic. Like everything I hate about gravel cycling, which is not that much, but like, those moments when you have to dismount and get off your bike if there's something too technical on the trail, or, climbing is hard on really steep stuff. All of that was eliminated when I was on the mountain bike. And, you know, I I'm I don't have all the finances in the world to spend on, fancy mountain bikes. So that's the only reason why I don't have one right now. But otherwise, I would be doing the mountain biking as well.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and that's you can always find a good used, cheap one for sure. You
Yeah,
can justify getting a nice mountain bike, but yeah, some
totally.
of them, I mean, in road bikes too, some of them get pretty expensive. But that's one thing I tell a lot of people because they think there's that barrier of like, oh, I have to have, the nicest or the newest thing. But
Right.
yeah, just how you started, borrowing somebody's and just getting the feel
Yep.
for it and the love for it. So yeah, um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So what tips would you give to somebody like wanting to get into it or thinking about getting into either road cycling or gravel riding or mountain biking or however, right? Yeah. What tips would you give somebody looking to jump into it?
Yeah. I think the best thing that I did early on was join a little community group that does group rides. I think that's where you're going to probably learn the most from people, who have been doing this for maybe a little bit longer than you or a lot longer than you. So I think like plugging into community, looking up on whatever your resources, Strava or whatever, for local group rides, I think that's like a great way to get started. I think too, like just kind of jumping in, especially when you're first starting out, I think throwing yourself into like all different disciplines is probably the best way to get started. Like, see what you like. Try road, try gravel, try mountain bike if it's available. Because I think to me, like, I would have never thought, like, I don't think I would have ever gone and enjoyed single track because that's just not, I don't picture myself as a mountain biker, but like the fact that I just was kind of forced into like going downhill. I'm like, oh, I actually really enjoy going fast and challenging myself. And I would have never known that if I just kind of stuck with what I was doing. But being thrown into that was a huge blessing that I didn't realize until I was there. Um, Third, I think learning or absorbing as much information about how to take care of, like if you buy a bike, how to take care of your bike. Bike shops can get very expensive when it comes to labor. And so if you can like look up how to fix tire, like how to fix punctures in your tires, or clean your chain, and like just good bike maintenance, even a little bit, like as little as you want, as little as much that you want to learn, I think is such a good thing. Especially, I don't know, I think that people are like, oh, I don't know, I'll just take it to the bike shop. I'm like, you can biking is very expensive. So the most as much as you can learn how to enjoy working on your bike in the garage, I think it's a huge part of it. It definitely wasn't the thing that drew me to it, but I actually find that that's kind of a meditative thing that I also enjoy doing.
Yeah, there's something definitely satisfying about figuring out how to do one of those things and then being able to
Yeah,
fix something on your own. There's definitely stuff out there that I'm
totally.
like, I'm not touching that. I'm going to take it to the bike shop. But
Yeah.
yeah, you bring up a good point. Is just the basics, right? Just the easy,
Yeah.
simple things. And yeah, I love we talk about there being open to like the different multiple disciplines of bicycling, right? I think a lot of people we can
Yeah.
get kind of hung up on road versus gravel versus mountain versus casual riders or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're all on a bicycle, and we've all
Yeah.
experienced that joy. And so I love that, and it kind of introduces you to other aspects of it too, and you can find that joy and that fulfillment and all those other things.
Yeah, I think challenging yourself in whatever area, even if it's like, the things that I was originally scared of, like clipping in to pedals, like those little jumps, or like climbing a steep mountain. There's this one road in Santa Barbara called Gibraltar that's like a huge climb, and I was always terrified to do it. I was just like, I don't know, people talk about it, and once I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, that wasn't even that bad. It was just like a long climb. And so I think just challenging yourself and allowing yourself to be bad at something, like that's the only way you're going to improve. So I say just throw yourself at it if you can.
And it's interesting how we can make it so much worse in our minds, right? Of like, oh, I don't think I can do that.
Absolutely.
There's no way I can do that. But like you said, when you just throw yourself into it, and then you kind of realize and recognize that you've kind of built up, this tolerance or this endurance to be able to do it just fine. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big mental component of it as well.
Such an accomplishment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about, yeah, just kind of what it does, riding a bike, what it does for your mind, how it's helped your overall wellness. But yeah, I just wanted to give you another chance to any other observations or any other things that it's kind of helped you with, or where you've seen benefits from mentally or physically or just overall in general.
Yeah, I think the one of the coolest things, I mean, aside from community, I think the community aspect is probably my favorite part of diving into this sport. And I'm not sure if I'm just, lucky to have a lot of really cool people in this area, but I think bringing people together has been, the support and community in any area I think can be brought out if you try hard enough. I don't know. To seek out those, like, even there's a boardwalk near where I live, and I'll see people on bikes and I'm like, they kind of know what they're doing. And so I'm like, I host this little group uh coffee ride on Friday mornings, and I'll just see somebody on a bike and they're stopped. I'm like, hey, you should come to coffee ride. And I just like to, see if people, are willing to step out and be a part of a community. So I think that's kind of the coolest part. But physically, I've seen such growth in myself as I'm developing my like leg muscles. Like I said, I was in high school, I was a swimmer, and so I had, really crazy arm strength, and same thing doing a lot of surfing. And um, I as soon as I started climbing more, I was like, oh my gosh, my legs need a lot of work early on. And now that I'm 3 years into it, I'm like, the stability that I feel on a surfboard just from the amount of cycling that I'm doing and how much my legs have like grown in strength, I find that it's like very stabilizing, and it's just cool to feel really strong, especially as a woman. Like, um, I've always had kind of upper body strength, but being able, I think it's part of your core. Like your legs and your quads are kind of part of your core. Like if you don't have leg strength, I feel like I have no balance. And so that was one of the really cool things about developing those muscles. And it took like quite a few years to really, have a solid foundation. Um, but I think that was like the one of the coolest things for me is just like I feel like strong and powerful, and that's pretty epic as a person to feel at your best. Um, and then mentally, I think I've had a lot of uh, family struggles in the last 10 years. Like my brother has schizophrenia, and like seeing my mom go through that, and my family go through that was always tough. And then also me just personally going through always like growing up with ADHD and being medicated and all of that, it just kind of cycling brought this way for me to channel that energy and those emotions. Um, either I'm talking to my friends on a bike, and having that sort of community, almost therapy. And then I also am channeling my energy and like doing healthy things, um, with friends outside. And I think those things just help my mental stability so much. And I think it's my therapy, whether somebody's there or not. It's like I get a moment to think, a moment to chat. Those kinds of things are super beneficial about riding.
Yeah, very well said. And yeah, thank you for sharing. There's a sense of, talking about that strength, right? It brings that self-confidence and that self-esteem. But
Yeah.
then also, you're able to conquer other challenges, and then, yeah, just whatever it is you're going through, family wise or your own thing, that self-reflection, that time by yourself, and then also that
Yeah.
community. That's huge. And yeah, I was gonna actually bring that up, the community aspect. I've seen you post those is it Friday morning coffee rides that you do?
Yes. Yeah. Friday morning coffee rides. We
You're
like
at it
to say it's
early.
like
What
an intro. Yeah.
what time are you doing this at? It looks early.
Well, we started it some this couple friend of or this friend this how do you say that? It's my friends that are a couple. They came up with this idea and they were like, "Can you help us get it started?" And I was like, "Absolutely." They're like, "We want to do 6 a.m. on Fridays." And I was like, "Oh gosh." Which is fine because I'm usually out riding early anyways, but I was like, "Oh, sure, I guess we'll try to convince people to get up at 6 a.m." And it's wild how many people are willing to get up, especially in the summer months when it's a little bit warmer. We've had like 40 people out. And I'm like, you guys are nuts. It's 6 a.m.
That's
But
awesome. That's a big
it's really
turnout.
cool. Yeah, we do like a tight 1 hour so that people have time to grab coffee and head out to work. But it's kind of like an intro to the weekend. For some people, it's a kind of a shakeout ride for their bigger rides on the weekend. And other people, it's like the big workout of the week. So it's been really cool to build that community and, support the coffee shops and, the cool people in the area.
Love it. And yeah, you're not the only person that's talked about that on this podcast of riding during sunrise or sunset. There's just something about
Yeah.
that, those golden hours
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just, yeah, it's magical. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So, moving forward, what are, yeah, some of the goals that you want to work on, either cycling or just, with your content or creation, anything you're doing, but yeah, anything that you want to improve, or, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but yeah, anything that you're kind of looking forward to.
Yeah. I'd say this year I'm actually, I mean, I spent quite a lot of last year racing. Um, and I I think this year I'm trying to refocus on rest and doing kind of a better job at like making sure I have balance and there's nothing there's not there's absolutely not any perfect balance that anyone has, but just trying to, you know, support myself and my brain and my body the best I can by, selecting, being a little bit more particular about, you know, do I actually want to work out today or can I take a rest day? Um, because when I was training, it was like I did exactly 200 miles every single week. Um, and that was just like it was pretty gnarly and I ended up not because of the training but um during that stretch I had a fainting spell where I fell off my bike. I fainted and fell off. I was going pretty slow, um but that was a huge wake up call where
Yeah,
I
it's
was like,
scary.
yeah, and I think it was a lot of things, dehydration, and all of that. But it kind of woke me up. I was like, you know what? Maybe I do a little bit less this year and just see how that goes. And I got to enjoy quite a lot of races, and I'm like, maybe I'll be a little bit more particular about which ones I pick and do the ones that I'm really, really excited or like I remember doing last year that I really enjoyed. One of them is Belgian waffle ride. I really enjoyed. I've done that 2 years in a row, and I just think it's like one of the best races. They like do the aid stations really well, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do like that one, um, and then like one or two others, but not seven like I did last year.
No, that's a wise goal and wise advice for sure. Just find that balance and be able to
Yeah.
rest and yeah, just take it as it comes. That's great.
Yeah, I think I'm doing some cross training too, so I'm starting to go back a little bit to doing more surfing again, especially in the winter. The waves kind of pick up in the winter. So I'm pouring into instead of being like, okay, I have to ride every single day. I'm like, well, the surf is really good tomorrow. Maybe I'll go surfing instead. And allowing myself that space has been pretty darn rewarding. And this last Saturday, my husband and I went out on a 15-mile, 3,400 foot elevation hike. And that was like the first time I had done such a big hike, I think ever, probably. And it was just cool. Like my hips hurt really bad, and I was like, this is awesome. Like doing something hard in a different arena was like a cool challenge. And I want to
Love
do
it.
more of that this year. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You have, awesome content out there. Where can people find you, whether on Instagram or your website or whatever? Yeah, you can give us that
Yeah.
info.
Yeah. So if you look on Instagram, my handle is Niki Nikki_camps. Um, and my website is also Niki Camps sans the underscore nikicamps.com. And yeah, that's where my portfolio is for like photo and video work, and then just some info. I'm gonna try to keep it updated with current stuff that I'm doing, like little group rides and things like that.
But yeah, no, I was checking out your website. You have some really great stuff. You do some great work. So yeah,
Thank
keep it up.
you. Thank you. It was such an honor to be on today. It was awesome.
For sure. Well, thanks so much, Nikki. And yeah, as you will continue to follow your journey along. But yeah, thanks again for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach.
All right.